Well, Drew, thank you so much for being on Creating Creators podcast today.
Man, thanks for
Let
having
me
me.
let me go ahead and jump off. Just before we started recording, you and I were talking a little bit about sort of me doing this podcast. And let me just go ahead and acknowledge to you, like, you were one of those guys that messaged me at a really good time. You and I don't know each other beyond just a little bit of messaging we've done on Instagram, and that started with you reaching out to me and just saying that you liked what I was doing on the podcast. So I have to thank you because, like I said, it was at a really pivotal time. I was considering, well, actually, I was planning to stop doing the podcast because it was, for me, it was a lot of time away from my family after a full time job. And your message, along with a couple of other people that came really at that almost that exact same time, it was really encouraging and really has kept me going and sort of even eventually lit more of a fire under me to do this. So thank you for that. Seriously.
Man, that's so awesome to hear. I've really been trying to live by this or live by that in the last couple of years. It's like if I think somebody's doing great work, I'm going to reach out to them and tell them. I have really figured out in the last couple of years of my career that we're all on these separate little islands, and this company and that company, and they use this group of people, and we use this group, and it can get very competitive very quick. And in a market like Birmingham, I have seen only growth and power from kind of coming together and at least supporting each other. I mean, I know I'm quoting the same projects my buddies are and whatnot, but just kind of pumping people up. Like when people do it to me, it means the world. And so now if I feel like somebody's doing great work, I'm going to share it with them.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I've had similar conversations, on and off the podcast about just the community in the Birmingham area, especially in the vein of creative work. And I think this podcast has even shown me it more. There's such a willingness to collaborate. There's such a willingness to sort of share with each other. And it doesn't feel like a competition so much. It feels like a team of people, and they'll rally behind each other. They encourage each other. They help each other out whenever they need a second hand or a third or fourth or fifth hand on set. So it's been really neat to sort of see that. And I'm looking forward to hearing a little bit more of your story because from what I understand, you've got a few people that you collaborate with that, to be honest, were, from what I understand, a little bit new to my, I guess, my scope of what I've seen going on in the Birmingham area. So,
Yeah.
so I'm trying to sort of expand my knowledge. You even asked me earlier, sort of what's the goal behind this podcast, and it really is that it's to expand my personal knowledge of what's going on in the Birmingham area in the video photography creative space, and just to get to know people and hear their stories. And so I'm excited to hear yours today. If you don't mind, we'll go ahead and jump into that very thing, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think for your story, I know just based on your social media presence, it starts off in a pretty strong way, from what I can stand. At least you're in your adult years. But if you don't mind, just sort of tell us a little bit about who you are, where you come from, sort of your background in general.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for the platform to speak. So I'm originally from Seattle, Washington. I grew up there for 21 years, and I had family in the South, so I've always been connected to the South. My mom's from here. But I very quickly, after graduating high school, realized that I really was not a college guy. And I tried so hard bouncing around to different colleges and just trying to get kind of that checkbox, which I thought I needed, but eventually landed at the Art Institute of Seattle. And so I took a year of video production there. and it was great. It kind of linked me to, you know, skills and things I already wanted to do. I grew up kind of watching my grandfather in California. He was an award-winning filmmaker in kind of like the educational space. So it was really cool to like go see his premieres, and then my uncle took after him and kind of did something very similar. So I grew up watching these really old school, you know, filmmakers go at it. Nothing digital, you know, real
I
editing,
dude,
real film.
I have so much respect for that. I mean, we have a button that says cut, right? But they were
So
literally cutting film. So it's
exactly, exactly. So I kind of grew up watching them from afar. And obviously, I did my own kind of creative stuff as a kid, you know, VHS cameras. But when I made it to the Art Institute, I really saw just how serious people were taking it, and kind of all the different dynamics of at least putting together a project. But then I went my own way and, you know, stumbled around life for many more years. Went through the Marine Corps, eventually moved to Alabama. Um, and it wasn't till probably 2016 that I decided to pick up a camera again. So I had really kind of almost gotten a little scared when I was at the Art Institute. I was like, whoa, whoa, like these cats are way better than I am. They're in from scholarship from Korea and China, and they are just like worlds better than me. This is not a place I should be. But what I found when I came back to it was just kind of that love and that fun, and that joy and that lightness again. So I just started taking pictures, and pictures led to, you know, people paying me for pictures. And then that very quickly led to me getting enough courage to take on a documentary. I was very naive with what a documentary would take, and I got the full experience. It lasted, you know, 2.5 years. There was a first version, there was a second version, and a third version. Um, I incorporated some other filmmakers eventually because I saw I needed help, and they worked for me for a little bit and left. And then I found another editor when I needed it again, but I got the full experience. And it just so happened that that documentary did really well.
what
Um,
year was this?
so this was probably 2017 or 18 when it finally kind of got done. It was a very trendy topic. I did it on opiate abuse and opiate recovery, which in the
Mm.
Birmingham scene at the time was extremely trendy. That word, opiate addiction, and at the time the news was posting, you know, numbers all the time, and so Birmingham was really kind of uncovering this cloak that there's a huge problem here. And it just so happened, from my own personal experience through recovery, that I was able to tap into people with these really intense stories that, had I not kind of been in that world myself and been able to relate to them, I don't think they would have ever gotten on camera. So when it finally came out, I mean, it was the first documentary, first time filmmaker. Um, it just got a lot of traction right off the start, and it got sponsored showings, and a lot of news and magazine coverage, and it was great. It was extremely scary. I put some of my story in there. Um, you know, my mom's on there, so it was very personal, and I never intended it to do so well. Um, but that's kind of what made it so great. It was unbridled. It was unchained, and it was raw, and that shot me into the world of being a filmmaker.
Wow.
Um, yeah,
So let me real quick say something before I forget it. I'm actually going, and I'm probably kicking myself for even moving off of where we're at right now. But going back to you saying you were born in Seattle
yeah.
and grew up there. I'm actually going to Seattle in July. My wife and I are
Good.
going
You're
for
going when it's sunny. Great.
yeah, we're going for a conference and looking forward to it. Never been up there, so definitely after this conversation, if you got some suggestions,
I do.
I have to
I
pick
do
your
for
brain on
sure.
that.
For sure.
All right, so that's one. But back to sort of this documentary, is that something that still is viewable? Is that something that we
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
find somewhere?
Absolutely. We did a festival run, and then we attacked distribution, and we went for Amazon, Netflix. It eventually got on Amazon Prime and some kind of like tier two streaming stuff. Did not make Netflix, but yeah, right now it lives completely free on YouTube and Vimeo, on both of my West Block Studios accounts.
Awesome, awesome. Well, I'll
Yeah,
definitely we'll have to check that out. We will be looking at your social platforms in general here in a little while. So
cool.
just whenever we go through some of your work. But you mentioned you sort of went over this sort of quickly, which sort of surprised me. But your time in the Marines, how long were you in the Marines? What was that like for you? Were you able to utilize at all your video interests? And then I guess the last question I'd have during that time, and we can talk more about it or less about it if you whatever you want to, but also I would ask like how has that really impacted you as a business owner now with West Block?
Yeah, great question.
There's a lot of
So
questions.
yeah, no, yeah. So the simple answer was I able to develop any creative skills or kind of exercise them in the Marines? Absolutely not. um, it was a time of discovery for me, and it did translate. What I learned in there translated a lot to film crews, and I didn't know that until I was on my first big, like Netflix style, tier one kind of production, and I saw that a lot of the way a film crew is ran, production is very similar to the military. There's hierarchies and there's people under this level, and everyone's very specialized. The camera department doesn't really mess with grip, and grip does because everyone's specialized in doing a highly specialized kind of job. That's very similar to the military. And so what I noticed was I started to meet a couple of crew members, and there were a couple other military vets in there, and all of us were just thriving and loving it. And a lot of that just had to do with we had established that we can take orders and we can work really hard, and we love working in a team. That was probably the biggest thing that I just felt like a chunk of me was missing when I got out of the military. So when I was in the Marines, I got to a certain leadership position. And in that leadership position, like, these leadership skills were really kind of honed and defined. And I got to see really good leaders, very fair leaders, leaders you could trust, and leaders that were kind of in the grit with you, on the front lines, digging the ditch with you. And what I saw is that's such a cool thing to bring to a film production. You're asking these people to work 10, 14 hours sometimes, horrible hours, 4 a.m. and just all these crazy stuff, leaving their family, um, you know. And so the best way to kind of get that productivity out of a group is to literally show it yourself. You can talk all day, but to really, show it and let them know that their needs are taken care of. Hey, we're doing lunch at this time. If you want a snack, hey man, you take a break for a second, like really be a leader that they love. That's who I liked working for. And so that's who I really try to be now. And I think it's translated really well.
I can imagine just military. I mean, especially I guess in the field kind of military hierarchy, the leader is literally in the trench with you, and I think of so many times in my experience in life in general when I've had leaders that lead from afar versus leaders that lead like literally are leading the way in the work itself. it definitely changes your respect for somebody when you see those sort of differences. And so
Absolutely.
I think just in life, man, regardless of the type of work you're doing, if you can, it's a whole lot easier to pull people along with you rather than push people ahead of you. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And I think that's a huge step that gets missing in uh, our field because, the technical skills and yeah, just the experience kind of get trophied. And so a lot of the leaders are more like money people, producers, and they're just kind of like writing schedule. They're all about the bottom line. And then you get the director that is very focused on story. So you really get no one that's kind of like holding the team together. The AD is just screaming at people. So like they're not making any friends, and so when I direct or I produce, I really try to be, even if it's just for a day or 2 days, it's like I've got this team for 2 days. How can I fully utilize them? So it's selfish in the sense that I want to get like the max out of them, but I want to do it with them trusting me, them wanting to come back and work for me. I've always really like gone after the big boys and big girls. Like I've gone right to the top and said, "Hey, I've got a production, yada yada. What's your day rate? Blah blah blah," and try to find some happy medium with them. Just because I know a lot of those a lot of that immaturity and a lot of that stuff that I just really don't have time for is usually kind of washed away with a little bit of the more experienced people.
Yeah, yeah. Do you ever work on sets where it is like just you or just you and another person? Do you do productions that are much smaller scale, or do you typically work with bigger crews in general?
Yeah. So when I first started, I was always working on someone else's crew, and I had West Block Studios at the time. It was Callner Creates, and it was pretty much, I would say, for almost 5 years, just me. And I took all the bumps and the scrapes and the heartbreak, and oh, it's so hard being your own shooter. So it wasn't until, I would say probably 2 years ago, I really started incorporating some of my professional friends. Um, and it has been a breath of fresh air because, yeah, the quote is bigger, so that can scare away, more clients. But at the same time, the clients you get appreciate um, what it really takes and really like respect what we do, rather than these kind of low bottom, clients that really just want somebody running around breaking their neck. Um, so it's kind of like if you treat yourself as a professional, eventually you start to almost pull in clients that treat you more professional. And so a big part for me was starting to quote a little bit more, but to quote in the help that I needed. Um, I mean, Brian, I did it for so long. I mean, the weddings, I did weddings for 4 years, the golf tournaments, all that stuff. And the quality really suffered, at least for me.
Yeah.
I couldn't be every hat perfectly. And what I really found is that leadership and kind of a little more, I don't know, pulled out producer level is really kind of where my skills lay. I've done a little bit of everything, but I haven't honed in on one department my whole career. So, this like kind of hybrid of skills really goes well for a team leader.
Yeah. I think what I've found is what's important is learning like what you're not good at, so that
Yeah.
like these are the people that I need on my team. Animated graphics are one of my big weaknesses. I mean, if I can find like a decent plug-in, maybe, but most of the time those don't work well for me. So those are definitely a weakness. And then music is a big weakness of mine because I didn't grow up like in really like a heavy music family, and my music skills are negative. And so
Yeah, yeah.
so like my coworker Cole Peavy, he and I we do a lot for our local school system. That's sort of our full-time job, and he's amazingly talented musically, and so that's been a huge thing for me. But I think it's just key, like knowing this is what I'm good at, but even more so, these are the things that I'm not good at that I need the help with.
Brian, that's huge, and I think our age kind of like allows us to see that. Um, I think there are a lot of first of all, like I don't want to be the old guy. You know, I'm 41. I don't want to be the old guy saying, you know, our way is better than the younger guys, because I think what the freshman class creators are doing is insane.
Yeah.
I'm jealous. I didn't have those skills at that age. They're so good. Their world's better than I was. But one thing that, you know, just money can't buy is that perspective. And it took me a lot of years of hitting my own head, trying to do everything to realize that, yes, I'm once again, I'm way better as a team. I'm able to utilize the skills that I have and kind of I've accumulated, way better than just trying to do everything for everyone. But it's so hard when you get that call and, you know, you've got, you know, the way I see it is you've got kind of money on the line. You know, it's like there could be a project that comes out of this. So you address it very sensitively, and, you know, you try to get, you know, little clues and find out the person's budget and this and that. And it's just so stressful, doing it on your own, because you just underquote completely, you know, just to basically get the client.
Yeah.
And I had so many years of really not pricing myself accordingly, because I just wanted all the work. I just wanted anything, I'll take it. And that got really, really, you get very spread thin. And then the work, I mean, at the end of the day, the work just really suffers. You
Yeah.
know, either your audio suffers or the editing, or you're just kind of doing it for a paycheck. And at that point, you get so far away from what kind of you originally came in the industry for, you know?
Yeah. I think you just mentioned the idea of, oh, it was just before that last statement. I had something and I've lost it. Oh, God, garbage. Sorry.
That makes me feel better. I'm forgetting
Yeah.
all the time, man.
Well, we are doing this at 8 in the morning, so so I have
Yes,
to keep that in mind.
and you can edit it. So yeah.
There you go. There you go. I won't edit out my fluffs, or my flubbers. I'll tell you that definitely. I got to be raw. You know,
Hey, I
if
feel
I
you,
expect
man.
that from my guests, I expect it from myself.
I
So,
feel you.
but oh, I was going to ask you, what is this your main source of income, or do you do something else in addition to West Block, or like are you full time?
So as of this is very sudden. As of the last 2 months, I have taken on a full-time job, as a video content specialist for Amherst Credit
Oh,
Union.
yeah, yeah.
And so I'm full time there. However, I am. It hasn't slowed down anything Westblock's done. I've just had to kind of step back a little bit and let the crews that I use, kind of take on a little bit more responsibility.
Yeah.
So, and this monster change, I don't know. It really came the last 2 months.
Are you working with Daniel Holmes?
Yes, that's my
Yeah,
boss,
yeah, yeah.
dude.
I know Daniel real well. Daniel is he's a Shelby County guy, and
Yeah,
used to work for the Shelby County Reporter.
yeah.
And so yeah, Daniel and our kids go to school together. He lives right here in the same area.
Oh my
So
God, he's gonna get
yeah.
a trip out of this thing. Okay,
Yeah, Daniel's a good guy, man. He's a really
he's
good
so
guy. So
good. He's
yeah,
he's one of those bosses.
When
I
you talk to
mean,
him about this, tell him, dude, he called you such a jerk, man.
I will.
Dude,
I'll be
he
like, you got
talked
to watch
so bad
the whole
about you.
podcast to see it. Yeah.
He just laid you out, man. Really. That's what I need you to tell him,
I
okay?
got you, dude. I got you.
But no, Daniel's a really good guy. I think I saw that on your LinkedIn, and
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if that was like maybe just something that was in the past that you hadn't updated, or maybe it was Facebook. Anyway, saw it somewhere. I stalk people on social media
Yeah.
before
Yeah.
I do
Totally.
these things. So,
Yeah.
but anyway, I saw it somewhere, and I was like, is that like an old job he had, or is that like a current job? So,
No,
because
it is.
I knew he had somebody, and that guy not too long ago, I think, had left for something else. So
Yeah.
I remembered him looking, but I wasn't sure. Were you that other guy, or are you somebody new? So that's cool, man.
Yeah.
Well,
So
congratulations on that.
thank you. I'm trying to put a huge situation into a couple of sentences, but the reason I made that change, I had been freelance for as long as I can remember, Callner Creates. And there was one point I jumped on an internal marketing team for a year or two and then got out and, went back and hit West Block really, really hard. But I had a child and my
That'll
little
change a
boy,
lot.
that'll change a lot. And it was kind of a slow change for me. I thought if I just grind harder and reach out to more customers, I can really I can do both. I can be a dad and a business owner and a filmmaker. And literally after a year of just going really, really hard, I realized, there's certain things that I need as a dad. I need benefits. I need some sort of kind of like projection. I need a team. And that's really what it was. And so I started putting my experience out there and trying to get interviews, and luckily found one of the best bosses ever, Daniel. But yeah,
You got to tell him we really talked bad about him though. Okay?
Oh, I
And
will.
then he's got to come on here and actually see for sure what we said.
I got you. I got you. But he's been really cool. I came in there saying, I own this company. It's very non-competitive with what we do at the credit union. Would it be okay if I continued on? And he said, yeah, as long as it's not, on our time. And so I've been doing it still, but I've finally been able to kind of do more of the role which I wanted. So the last 3 productions I've been mainly doing all pre-production, producer role, and then I will send a team to collect the footage, and then I will edit and do delivery and edits and everything. So I'm trying to kind of find my lane there, because obviously I want to be on set. I want to be, pressing record and setting lights up, but it's kind of a different stage right now.
Yeah. Hey, I totally respect it, man, because I'm in a very similar boat. I do what I call Pope films. And that's just like side work that I do pretty much. So I've got a retainer client, and then I got a few other clients that I work with here and there. And then my full-time job is really probably, I don't know if we have the same title, but pretty much the same thing. I just do it for a school district, as they call us digital media specialists. But basically a fancy title for videographer and photographer. Maybe not so fancy of a title, but a title for that.
Right.
And so it's tough though. It's tough to balance, working a full-time job, and then after that, working with clients for the Pope films, and then on top of that, trying to be a dad. I've got 4 kids. Thankfully,
wow.
my kids are mostly grown, not grown, but my youngest is 9, and then I got an 11-year-old, and then 2 16-year-olds. So it's it's a lot, but at the same time, man, I'm thankful that I get to do it, and I do have to try to strike that balance where I think I was talking with Brian Curtin about this the other day, but like these computers are incredible. I mean, I'm sitting in front of a new Mac that I bought this year, a new MacBook, and man, the things it can do is incredible, but it can also become a real barrier between me and my kids because I can
Oh, wow.
sit in my living room while my daughter's trying to show some new baton thing she's learned, or my son's trying to tell me a joke that he's heard recently. And instead of me paying attention to them, I'm in an edit. But yet I use the excuse I'm home, but I
No,
say I'm home with my kids, but I'm really not. So it's a tough thing to strike, tough balance.
it really is. Filmmaking at its core, it's very teamwork oriented, but it's selfish in the sense that we have to completely. Oh, I mean, what's the word? We have to be selfish in the sense that we have to kind of keep the creative vision, which doesn't allow a lot of distractions from our family. So it's like we have to be in like family mode or we have to be in filmmaker mode. I was very naive when I first had my son, and we were kind of thinking, okay, how many weeks is my wife going to get off? And at the time, I was just full time West Block Studios, and I was like, oh, it's a little baby. He'll sleep next to me. I can edit all day. And that lasted about 20 seconds. And
Yeah.
I realized, oh man, I mean, literally until he goes off to college, like dad needs to like almost lock the office door. I mean, it's like even right now I can hear him playing downstairs, and like unless I had on headphones editing, I would still kind of be in that world and this world.
Yeah.
The balance is really hard.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and there's so many. I think so many people are doing a similar thing to what we're doing now, where it
Yeah.
is that balance of like I'm doing this full time job and I'm doing this on the side, or just stuff people that just work from home now.
Right.
That's a tough gig, especially I think in this creative space that we work. Editing is great; you can do it anywhere, and it's horrible because you can do it anywhere. So
That's so true. Brian, I got a lot to say about this. So the last 2 years I was freelance. Now, when I'm on a shoot and, what you see the Instagram pics of, and I'm crewed up and I'm in black and we're looking all cool and, we're in the moment, that only lasts about, 4 hours. And then the rest of literally the whole time is me by myself editing. And, you know, creative, I just don't think we're meant to be isolated so long. And it can really bleed into like any creative kind of spirit you have. Um, Editing is once again such a solitary thing, but at the same time, it wears and tears on you. So I feel for the creatives that don't, I remember always seeing guys that had a full time job and also kind of ran a company on the side. And I always thought, oh, they're just never going to make it because they're not 100%. But now I get how much freedom that actually brings. You're not tied to rent money. You're not tied to grocery money. You are literally now just focusing on the creative aspects,
yeah,
which, you don't have to say yes to everything, which is huge burden off you,
yeah.
especially in
That's
Birmingham.
that has really helped me with pricing, and I want to move on to the next slide, but I'm going to say
Yeah.
this, and I think it'll segue into this, but for me, not being dependent upon Pope Films to pay my bills, that's really important to me, at least for right now, because I'm not having to price a job because I really need the job. I'm pricing the job to where I'm like, this is going to take me away from my family. This is going to add extra hours to my day. I'm going to make it worth it. And if they don't want to pay that, that's fine. They don't have to pay that. They can either not do it or find somebody else. I'm okay with not doing the work because then I have more free time. But I'm also okay doing the work because I'm charging enough to where it's worth it. Now, I say
Yeah.
that, and I want to give you a chance to talk about that, but I do also want to ask you, just in a vein of like money. I want to ask you, like, you talked about working with crews and everything. and I found this recently, the more times I work with people, the more I'm realizing, wait a minute, I'm getting less. Like I priced this job, it's the biggest job I've ever priced, but I'm getting less of the money because of the fact that I'm working with so many other people. How has that been? I'm probably not leaving much room. And then also I want to know like what is West Block? So I threw a lot out there. I don't know that
Yeah.
I'm doing very
No,
good
no,
in this
no.
interview, so I'm sorry for that.
You're doing great, buddy. You're doing awesome.
Thank you.
So the first question, and yes, I'm glad you asked that because it's on everyone's mind. How do I go from being the solo shooter and making 100% of the profit to start incorporating this help that I need? But now my customer's used to this price point. How do I have found your customer has a lot more hope and kind of rah rah for you than you think, even if they don't express it. And so they don't mind getting moved up to a higher price point because in their eyes, it seems like better quality. Now, some of the long term customers you've had, they're used to like this super cheap price and, Drew O'Brien out there running around and, just making it all work. But so they might need a little bit of explanation of why you're kind of incorporating. But that was really scary for me. I'm a people pleaser. I want to be everyone's friend. I want to have all the customers love me. And it was a really scary jump. But, at the end of the years, I would do these end of the year reels. And, there were a couple of years I just wasn't happy with what I was putting out there. And no one else would know. I mean, the reel still looked good and it looked like I did tons of stuff. But deep inside, I was like, that could have been better. 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 And the common denominator was, had I have had a gaffer, had I have had a dedicated audio guy, had I have had a second shooter, like that's what was missing. So I started very small and I just started quoting on like almost like PAs. And there was really no budge with the customers. And so then from there, I started quoting in like actual camera operators, more of like anywhere from, like a 500 to like a 750 kind of range. But I made it very clear, like why I'm doing it. And from there, it just kind of evolved into, okay, here's the chunk of money that I want to make. And what I think's fair, I know I'm going to be doing pre-production. I know I'm going to be editing, like you said, taking away from my family all this time. What I do is I take that chunk and I just times it by 2 and say, what kind of crew can I get, for the other 50%? And usually it's a pretty good crew, but then that number looks scary. That now we're talking that number is big. It feels inflated. But I just started throwing it out there. And I would say for every yes, I got a no. And that's okay because I knew that was going to happen. But you just kind of put your feet in the ground and you say, from this point forward, I'm going to charge what I'm worth. And what I'm worth means I need 3 people because I can't do this, and you just draw a line in the sand. And it's very scary. You start making those quotes and you get some no's, but new clients are always going to come in. And those new clients that come in don't know your old prices. They don't know your history. They don't know you started off with a Nikon D and your mom's tripod, they don't know you as the ragtag shooter back in the day. And so you hit them with that competitive price right off the bat. And a great friend of mine who has a really successful company in California, he told me, whatever you do, don't be the bottom quote. He's like, whatever you do with these bigger clients, Wells Fargo, these brands, Adidas and stuff like that he's quoting, he's like, whatever you do, don't be the bottom quote. And he said 9 times out of 10, they take the highest quote, regardless of the work. And so it's really sort of, that's how these higher level clients see things, is the more money we pay, the better the work's going to be. And So unfortunately, that's just kind of how the industry is.
Yeah, I've definitely felt this. I guess my experience has been that the more the more that I value myself and the more that I can almost with confidence come in and say, this is how much it is, the more it's not a question for the client. You know
Ex-
what I mean? Like
Exactly.
I think early on I was so hesitant to even give a price. I'd be like, well, I mean, even my delivery of the price, it would be like, well, I mean, if your budget works for it, I could do it for this
And yes,
much. But if not, we could probably, well, now you've said there's a lower option here, like
right.
I'll budge on this, but if you come in and say, hey, this is how much I charge for my day. I've got these add-ons that you can do for this. If you want this edit or this edit, it'll be this much. And oftentimes, man, at that point, I may get a little bit of a raised eyebrow just because of the fact that they're like, well, that's more than what I was initially expecting. But I think the confidence you deliver it with, it's like, well, okay, I guess that's what I should have expected to begin with. How soon can we start? That kind of stuff. So
Absolutely. No, totally. So none of these clients know what we know. They don't know day rates, they don't know animator fees, they don't know gear rental, they don't know any of it. And we're such a small niche, and like we all know because we talk about it. We're on online pricing all the time, and it's very like prevy in our head, but to them they just don't know anything. All they know is the final result. And so you really like, I used to, when I started to make this transition, I was like, oh, the best way to show them will be if I itemize everything and show
yeah,
them that on the quote.
right,
That was just too much for them.
yeah,
I mean, literally, not one of them appreciated it more. It, like you said, it's the confidence. And a lot of that for me was being able to separate that moment where, like, let's say I'm at a meeting and we finally, we all know we're going to have to talk about price. We get there. So the best way I do it is I separate from that. I say, I'm going to take this information home. Give me a day. I'm going to go over stuff with my team, yada, yada. And then you shoot them like a very professional price point with everything included. So you're just not in that moment having to, because I did that for years too. I
yeah,
literally would have taken anything, any budget someone said, you
yeah,
know, and then the work is always backbreaking. So it's like now as a dad and a little bit older, it's like now I really do price that in. I'm like, okay, this is going to be a tough physical day. How much is that worth to me?
yeah. I've
So
done
it's
that with weddings, man. I'm like, my back can't handle
oh,
another $1,200 wedding shoot. You know what I mean? Like
exactly.
my back can't handle that. So
Exactly.
yeah,
Weddings was the hardest thing for me to pull out of. And even when I stopped advertising I was doing weddings and stopped posting. I was still did a whole nother year of weddings, just kind of under,
yeah,
the radar, just because the money was so constant and good. But at the end of the day, it was just late nights, back breaking. You're with the gimbal all day long. Your back's destroyed.
yeah.
And
It
I saw what some of the real wedding shooters are quoting, and some of the big boys I kind of learned from. I mean, some of them were quoting 13, 14 grand. And
yeah,
then they would have two shooters with them. And so the
right.
shooters would do all the work and they were kind of just schmoozing the client the whole day. I mean, that's the best of all worlds. And then, he spends one day of editing, the actual guy. But I mean, that's just so much profit, So
Yeah. The
it's a tough industry. Yeah.
Yeah, weddings are one of those things. I think if you can get into that upper tier, there's a guy here in Helena. He goes by Film Poets on YouTube, and his stuff, man, he's top tier. He
Yeah.
really is. And I get it if you've hit that level to where, I mean, he's charging more for that than my biggest client would ever pay,
Right.
probably.
Totally.
And so if you're hitting those kind of levels, by all means, keep going, man. And probably your body gets used to it. But man, the way I do weddings once in a blue moon, my body can't handle it.
Me too.
By lunchtime, I'm like my lower back is just a knot. And
I'm
it hurts
done.
so bad, man.
I look by the, I never want the customer to see me upset or stressed or because I want to be hired again, and
Right.
like I want it to
Right.
be a great experience. Um, but I will say weddings, by the end of the wedding, I look wrecked. I mean, it's just a full, I did one in Mobile one time and it was like 4,000% humidity.
Oh
I mean, it
gosh.
was
No.
so brutal. The minute I got out of the car, this like, nice wedding, I was just drenched.
Yeah.
And it was 4 hours before the wedding. And so it was just a really, really long day. And I was like, I mean, even if I tacked on another couple of thousand, it still may not have been worth it just because it was
Yeah.
so much.
Yeah.
I had to get
And
an Airbnb and it was just a whole thing.
And most of the clients, at least most of the clients that I work with weddings, I mean, it's getting to the point now to where the price that I set, they're having to decide now. Okay, do we go with the more expensive videographer or do we go with a more expensive photographer? And I don't know. And so at that point, a lot of people are struggling to make that decision. I did a wedding just recently that I do enjoy just the relationship building,
Yeah.
especially in the cases of this last wedding I did. It was actually a former student of mine.
Oh,
And so
cool.
in that case, man, it was like, it's great to see them. It's great to sort of celebrate with them and be able to, I feel like I'm a pretty decent people person, in
Yeah.
those
Oh, yeah.
moments. But man, it in between, like, congratulations, it's a beautiful day. The dress looks great. Y'all are doing great. In between moments like that, I was telling the guy that was with me, I was like, my back is killing me, man. I gotta sit down, and I need some water. Like it was a long day, man. But
Yeah.
anyway, let's move on. I want to talk about West Block. I want to talk about some of the work. So I'm going to sort of combine these two slides. Tell us, what is West Block? Tell us. I would love to know the name origin, because when I was looking at naming and still consider, I mean, Pope Films, we all do it, right? We all put our
Right.
name on it to begin
Totally.
with.
Totally.
But when I've looked at doing a name, I thought about doing West, something West, because my grandmother's maiden name is West, and she's like hugely influential in my life, and she grew up in West Blockton.
Oh,
And
cool.
so what I thought, man, when I saw the name of your company, I was
You're
like,
damn. You got it.
I did, man. I was like, dang it, why didn't I name it West Block? Like, that sounds like it would be a homage to her in multiple ways. And I was like, man, I should have thought of that, like West Block. That would have been so great of a name. But I'm curious, like, where did that come from for you? And don't tell me you got a grandmother that grew up in West Blockton,
No, no, no,
but
no, no.
but I want to know, like, what was the origin of that, and then also, like, talk a little bit about the kind of clients that you do work with, and the type of work that you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So for, 80% of kind of my career, I owned a company called Callner Creates. And very similar to you, I
Yeah,
followed the whatever, kind of that playbook of putting your name. Um, it was a name I just kind of went with, and someone suggested it. I went with, I got a quick logo. And then over the years, the logo would always change. I would always try to update the logo, but the actual name, I thought I was just attached to it.
yeah,
And especially from the success of that first documentary, I was like, okay, I've established myself as a director now. It's got my name. It had ties to my uncle and my grandfather, so there was like family origin there. But at the end of the day, I wanted to jump in. I wanted to start something totally different that I was struggling to do with Callner Creates. So as Callner Creates, it was still just kind of solely focused on me. And when I would bring people on, we were still a team, but like it still always fell on me. And I kind of took some reference from some New York crews and LA crews, kind of what they've done. And lots of them were 4 to 5 person teams, highly specialized. And their stuff looks amazing. And so what I saw is like, these monster kind of marketing companies or whatever, like, yeah, they're doing a lot, but I think they're losing a lot of clients to these 4 to 5 person teams. And once again, got reference from my buddy in California, and he said, just go ahead. And I mean, you guys in Birmingham already pull, hey, come be my AC, come be this. And we'll switch titles all the time. He said, go ahead and just create that, put it on your website. And it doesn't mean that person has to work for you full time, yada, yada. But like, he's like, that's how we all do in California. And so sure enough, I just kind of went for it. So the name was West, was an ode to me being from the West Coast. The block was just kind of like, I kind of came in the game with this kind of gritty, really honest, transparent film. And so it was kind of just this, like, I want to keep to these organic roots. So I kind of played around with, West Ave and West Street, and West Block just had the best kind of feeling to it.
Yeah.
But it took me a while. I knew I wanted West in it, like similar to what you were saying. I knew I wanted West, and I don't know, it took me like a couple of months to really kind of hone in. But then once I made the change, it felt, I felt like that imposter syndrome. I was like, no, I mean, I'm Callner Creates. People know me as like the cheap guy, and what are they going to think when I come in with this, 4-person crew and I'm quoting this? But once again, I just had to take that leap into faith and trust that eventually I would find my crowd. But actually, a lot of my regular customers were just like, go, we support you. We still want to work with you. So West Block at the moment, it takes on stories that I kind of have a connection with, or some of my past clients that have always given me the freedom to go a little bit deeper. I've always had a little deeper edge. That doesn't always translate to what the customer wants, but I do a lot of nonprofit stuff that you can get pretty deep with. We did some short films, that we produced, and at the moment it's just in a good spot because it's not, like we were talking about earlier, it's not my sole income. So I can really kind of choose the products I want to do. One of the pictures you got up there is when I first changed over the skateboarder.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That was something I totally funded myself, put it together, and I had to go with it, Brian, like just like the documentary, I had to just say, this is what's in my head, a really cool, gritty Nike skate commercial. I mean, it doesn't sound like I can make a lot of money off of it, but like visually I see it. I grew up around a lot of skaters in Seattle, and I just always thought they had a really cool kind of gritty vibe. All of them are so down on being on video. Like, they are probably some of the best talent you can ever get. They love being on video. They'll do whatever you need, and they're just salt of the earth people. They're great.
Yeah. Dude, when I saw this, I think this was probably the first thing that I saw of West Block Studios. And man, that shot coming across the bridge, the shot when he's going down the sort of the parking deck road, that shot right there where he's looking up at the building, like it's got some great shots in it, man. I really thought this was well done. I think the sound, which unfortunately I usually don't play sound on this. On these things, but the sound goes so well with this. I thought this was really well done.
Thank you.
And I love the fact that it was like a spec ad. Like you just put yourself out there and said, let's do it, man.
Exactly. And I was like, if I'm going to change the name, and really go after kind of a more creative, that's a bad way of saying it, but a more creative client that kind of gives you a little bit more wiggle room, rather than just a shooter, I'm going to make something I like. And so I went right up to somebody I'd been wanting to work with for a long time. And this kicked off a really tight relationship with this cinematographer, Kyle Roberts. He is amazing. And he was somebody I always saw from afar, but was kind of like, he's going to be too expensive. And I had rented some gear from him. He owns a rental shop in town. So I talked to him there.
What's the rental shop?
Oh gosh, you're going to have to edit this. Kyle's going to be so mad.
What was his name? Kyle what?
Kyle Roberts. I'm blanking on the rental. Hold on.
Oh, Next Level. Yeah.
Next Level.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
So,
I'm familiar with Next Level.
Kyle's great. He worked a long time in LA, and then he worked in a rental shop in LA. And then he came back to Birmingham or Alabama, where he's from, and just with this like wealth of industry knowledge. He's always been a cinematographer. He is a hardcore DP. And so we started building a relationship off me renting gear from him. And what I would realize is I would rent this set of lenses I wanted to try. But when I would come back to him, I would say, oh, like it doesn't look like how you would shoot it. And he's like, oh, well, yeah, that's because that lens is yada, yada. He's so technically smart.
Yeah.
And after a while, I was like, what am I trying to prove by renting these lenses that are a little bit out of my skill level? And so I just asked him his day price, and I immediately, before we even got into price, I pitched him the skate spec, and he sold me within seconds. And the way we just worked together, when you find that frequency with somebody, I mean, it's so rare. And we just sat there and went back and forth. What about this? What about that? What about this? What about? Both me and him are kind of the same age range, which helps a lot. Yeah. We've both been through just a lot of grit. And so we just don't have time for like anyone that's not going to work top tier, He
did I think he may have it linked on there. Yeah. He did a podcast episode with this other podcast that is actually really good. Just what all he said. I think I was listening to it one day in the car because he had posted maybe in his stories about it. But he's got a really cool story and has worked. I mean, he works on some really big things.
Yeah.
And then also, like you said, the rental house. But that podcast, I think, according to this link, it looks like it's the cinematography podcast, and the guys that do it seem to do really well. So,
dude,
yeah, he seems like a really cool guy.
He would totally do yours too.
Yeah,
absolutely, dude. He's really become like a good friend now. We've done 3 projects, and we've got 3 more lined up. So he just kind of became my guy.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh man, like once again, it's a little bit of a pride to swallow that there is someone better than me, to work with my clients visually. But what I saw is I've pretty much got all the skills he doesn't have, and he's got all the skills I don't have. And so we're just kind of a perfect connection. I mean, I wish I could bring him on full time. I wish there was enough work in the world, but at the moment he's the first one I'm hitting up, and he brings so much more than a cinematographer. He really gets involved in every project, and he pushes up. Like, you want a DP that kind of pushes the producer or pushes the director a little bit, and says, that's fine, I can do that and I'll still get paid, whatever. But what if we look at it like this? They kind of have those hard conversations that it would just be so much easier for them just to say, yeah, whatever you want, I'll shoot it. But he is just such a film guy. It's in his blood that he wants everything visually. So that
Yeah.
skate spec is just as much of his baby as it was mine.
Well, and it's really cool. Like the guy you got on camera, the talent, man, dude, that dude has such a great look
Totally.
for a skater for the Birmingham area. I think you picked some great iconic locations, especially that bridge. Is such a beautiful shot. So
So
props,
that
man. I think it's cool.
that's something you gotta talk to Kyle about. That was he was basically like, okay, what's your eventually we had to get to budget. He's like, what's your budget? This is a passion project. Like, where can we find? And eventually, when we finally found somewhat of a happy medium, obviously Kyle ended up doing so much more for free, but he was like, I'm going to throw in this extra lens. It's like a Laowa, vintage, like crazy zoom on it. He basically like, it was like something he pulled off the top shelf and like blew the dust off, and like opened it up. It was like, like this one is like his baby. It never gets rented. And he set up this amazing shot on the bridge, standing on his van. I mean, it was just like, and I just let him do it. And he was like, I don't know if this is going to make it in or not, but I still want to make time to do it. And it just turned out so good. So that was a constant focus. Jay Galloway, our amazing friend, was pulling focus across the whole time. And obviously I could only use like, whatever, like 2 seconds of it.
Right.
But we have like a bunch of different takes of him doing tricks over it, whatever. But I just wanted to show Birmingham without actually showing like the word Birmingham.
Right.
I wanted
Yeah.
everyone from around this part to know like, oh, whoa, they were like in the street. Like we know these corners and stuff.
Yeah. Well, it's really cool. I mean,
Thank
it
you.
amazes me more and more the number of people that are first of all just in the Birmingham area doing this kind of stuff,
Yeah.
but also like just the friendships and the willingness to sort of partner up with each other to do something like this. I mean, I don't know if you saw the when I talked with. Who all was it? It was Cedar Creative, and it was Sean Patrick Kirby and John Champion. They did
All great guys.
that car spec ad. Did you see
Insane.
that one?
Yeah.
Oh
Oh
my
yeah.
gosh,
Oh
man!
yeah.
It was, but I mean, so much of that was just them saying, "Hey, we've got this vision for something. We want to do it." And they just went in on it. I don't know.
Right.
I don't even know if there was a budget for it. They just said, "Hey, let's do it. Let's make it happen." And that kind of stuff. First of all, just people at those kind of levels.
Yes.
Anybody that's doing things bigger than me, I'm like, for them to say, or for yourself to say, or for this guy to say, like, hey, it's worth doing this, whether I get paid or not, or if I get paid as much as I normally would get paid, that doesn't matter. What matters is us, sharpening our skills, flexing, some muscles maybe that we haven't had the chance to flex, and just really honing our craft a little bit more. So, like that's what it's about, and the fact that
It's what
people at
it's
such high
about.
levels are still doing that, it shows that anytime I did a spec ad for like a Grapey Co commercial,
Yeah.
man, it's been a year ago now. Cole and I were talking about it just yesterday. It was a Father's Day thing. I got to re-release that, at
Yeah.
least put it back out. But I mean, man, it's just fun to be able to create something, and not having somebody that's a client telling you this is what it's got to be. It's just you going out and say, what could it be?
If I had looked at how much it was going to cost, I would have never have started it. And something was telling me I was getting kind of creatively dead in the sense that I was just only doing client projects. I wouldn't even fire up my computer or look at a camera unless there was kind of like a paycheck
Right.
associated with it. And that started to really bother me because I had come in the game so raw and just it had nothing to do with money. And so I had really kind of lost my way. So when I finally, that energy of just asking Kyle, I mean, it had probably been in my head for a little bit. I'd probably had all sorts of combos with myself. He's too big. He doesn't want to do it. I don't have the budget for him. You know, he's going to think this is amateur. But when I finally said, hey, man, I've kind of been thinking about something, like, it's a weird thing with creatives. You were talking about like John Champion and, Cedar. All those guys have told me the same thing. They've told me, if you have a project, give me a call. They didn't say if it's this much, that much, give me a call, because all these creatives want to do something creative that is not for a client. And they all want, it's amazing to me. You're talking about, you're blown away by this community in Birmingham. I am too, because I know it's not like that in LA. I know it's not like that in Atlanta. Or Seattle or wherever. New York, definitely not like that.
Yeah.
And it's like, yes, we might have some barriers with some stuff in Birmingham, but man, these like creatives coming together, where does that happen? It doesn't happen anywhere. Yeah. So everyone is like really cool, really on board with stuff, and they get fired up. And the minute you kind of like let that little secret project or whatever, that you want to kind of keep protected, you let it out a little bit, and you kind of let some other influence, see it and whatnot. It just turns into something beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. And the humility on so many of these guys, like just the fact that some 40-year-old bald guy's reaching out to so many people, man. And I haven't had a single one yet tell me, no, like, I don't want to do that. There's no, everybody has said yes to it. And matter of fact, I've got a lot this next week. I think I've got over the next week and a half. I think I've got like 6 people that I'm interviewing. So
you're because you're doing it right. You're a very respectful dude. You're not like amateuring it with just like flying off the cuff. You do research, like it looks like a real thing. The visuals look good. You edit it, you make it clean. And so like right off the bat, somebody's like, oh, this is legit.
I appreciate that, man.
Yeah. Regardless how long you've been doing it, like it looks and appears yada, yada. And I think a lot of these guys, by the way, Sean Patrick Kirby is the real deal. Somehow I finagled him into being a DP for me on one of my films when I was very much more amateur. And, he not just taught me a lot as a director. He literally was like teaching the whole crew, and it was so cool. I love that dude. But yeah, he's the real deal for sure.
Well, I was when I even was suggested to talk to him, I think it was John Champion that pointed me to him next. I was like, oh, that's not gonna happen, man. Like that's this guy's not. I mean, I'm talking to John Champion. I was like, that's right. I've achieved my limit. I've gone beyond where I was supposed to with even I felt like everybody at that point. And then Sean Patrick Kirby, man, even Brian Curtin, who I just released his this past week. Like those guys, just because I think that they're at a level that. When I first started exploring sort of social media in this vein, those were the guys that I saw that were sort of at the top.
Totally.
And it's been really neat to just get to talk to them. Like Brian was so laid back, man, and just so kind. And he reached out to me. Well, I reached out to him first, and then his response to me was he was another one like you, where it was like, that is so encouraging at just the right time, because I don't know. I wasn't getting much traction with it. And for me, the conversations had been great, but I think it was Sean Patrick Kirby. I did his, and then I posted it, and then I didn't do another one because things just got really busy. I didn't do another interview for a while between him and I'm trying to even remember who the next one was. But anyway, eventually I got back around, but it was because I'd gotten some really good encouragement from some people. So again, thank you for that, as well as Brian, and I have to thank Cole that I work with, because he he encouraged me. And then this guy Colin, I'm going to have on a upcoming episode. He really encouraged me as well. He was even like, man, I'll edit it for you. Like, don't stop. So
Dude,
it was nice.
We want a platform here in Birmingham. You know, before I was kind of, I guess while I was doing it, but I worked on a lot of big films here too. And for like 3 or 4 years, lots of different departments. But what I saw was these mega producers, Netflix, whatever, New York, LA, they would get here and immediately hire out of state crew. I mean, that was like one of their first things. And no matter who they had kind of as their support staff, I'm telling them, check the film directory. We got huge names here, blah, blah, blah. We've got gear. We've got whatever you need. We've got union people. We've got whatever. They would still look at Atlanta. They'd look at New York. They would bring people in from Chicago. And this went on for years. And a lot of people in the industry know about it. And so it was just kind of like, wow, like somebody like you doing this in Birmingham, showcasing people in Birmingham. I commend you for doing it. Thank you for having the effort. And, I think we all want to do it, but like you're actually doing it. And now you've gotten some momentum and speed, and just keep going, because I mean, look at Joe Rogan's first, 100 episodes, or Theo Vaughn or whatever. Like,
oh yeah,
they're all just kind of like whatever, but you're doing it right by setting up the next couple and just go ahead and scheduling them. So then it's like, there's nothing that gets in your head like, oh, I suck. Why would I do this? Because now you have a responsibility to do it because you told that person. So it's just these like little mental tricks that we all get in that no one's. What I found, I did a podcast for a very short period of time. It was about becoming a dad. And what I found was a lot more people were listening than I thought, or what the analytics showed. People still come up to me to this day, more like friends and family, but they're like, why did you stop? I was listening to everyone on the way to work, or this and that. And I was just, what? Like, I literally thought I was just paying to hear myself speak. Yeah. So a lot more people are watching and listening than you think.
Well, I appreciate that. It's been good. I think the first go around, whenever, because I actually released like the first original 4 or 5, and then I actually stopped, and then that was like a whole nother Instagram account, and then I started releasing on my The Mr. Pope account, and then sort of reignited it. Sharing on Instagram has really helped. The first go around, I barely shared at all, and this go around it's been a lot better. But the community around it, the people that have responded or commented, it's been really good. So again, I do appreciate you for being one of those people that's really cheered me on. But I need to ask.
You did your research, sir.
I tried, man. I tried. I really need to ask. What is this, man? Tell me about it. While you're talking, let me find it exactly. That was an early one, man. Matter of fact, that on your YouTube channel, it is the first video. If you scroll all the way down to the bottom, man, this is it.
Wow.
So I need you to just sort of like this is your chance, man. Like, this is your chance to explain yourself.
what this was I started out doing music videos, and it was always really fun and light. And I grew up in the 80s. I had an older sister, so I was always a huge Boyz II Men fan.
That's exactly the vibe.
Still am. Yeah. So I found a guy, a good friend of mine, and most of my friends know I'll pitch them kind of goofy ideas all the time, but I pitched it to him, and I didn't know him as well as my other friends. I was a little nervous, like he doesn't know this kind of goofy side of me. And I pitched it to him, and he was not just slightly in. He was like, absolutely, like, where do I need to buy costumes? And I was like, oh, wow, I found the guy. He had also grown up with Boyz II Men. So we started throwing around different songs, what we could do. He was equally, like, if not more committed than me. He drove down to like some certain gas station, spent $200 on fake jewelry, like almost the next day. We started meeting at thrift stores to like, try to get our costumes together. And then eventually we were like, okay, let's do, there was a lot of like relationship sexual songs. And we're like, no, 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 no. Let's do something for our moms and we can premiere it on Mother's Day. So we found this Boyz II Men song.
This outfit is my favorite one.
I still
like
have
this
that.
set.
Yeah. Dude, thank you, man. I'm like, I wish I could wear it more. I got rid of most of them. Like I got rid of like almost everything, but that red Reebok tracksuit with the pumps.
Yeah.
So primo.
You can't get rid of that.
No. So what we did, I had none of the experience I have now. This was just me, that Nikon D I was telling you about, 3200.
Your mom's tripod.
My mom's tripod, like a little boom box. And we just went to a bunch of different places and we would do like 3 or 4 performances. But not taking it too seriously. I mean, there were civilians walking by. It was, but once again, like I followed that creative, just like go do it. Like stop thinking what anyone's going to think. And I still think like it's one of the better things we did. We had no camera operators, nothing.
You just set the camera up,
and
then you went and got in front of the camera and
yeah. Oh yeah,
that's so cool, man. I think it's great. I saw you recent. I think you shared it out.
For Mother's Day again. Yeah.
But no, I thought it was great. I think it's you got to be able to laugh at yourself a little bit.
Totally.
And if you can't, then everyone else is going to laugh at you, and it's going to be painful. So
Absolutely.
At least that's been my experience. But
me too. So another good thing about this was this came out right before Facebook and YouTube got really serious about copyright stuff and like their algorithms. So for a while, I would say the first year it played on Facebook and shared, and no one had an issue with it. And then eventually, I think it got pulled from one thing, maybe Facebook, but it's still somehow, I guess, just under the radar at YouTube, or they don't care about it enough. But it's real. It's real music. We always said right before we hit, post, me and Chris talked. His name is Chris Cavenfar, and we said at the end of the day, if Boyz II Men takes us to court for this, that's still a win because we love Boyz II Men, and
you're going to get to see their lawyer at least, right?
Right. Yeah. I'm like, what money are they going to take? So
I think for the most part, this would be considered a parody. And if it's considered a parody, I think you're covered. Cause you can make jokes with songs and that kind of stuff. So dude, I love it. I think it's cool. Those shoes are legit, dude.
Thank you, dude. I mean,
and the fact that you still have those, man.
Oh yeah, I can't do it every Halloween, but like every other Halloween, I'm in the tracksuit and the pumps.
That's cool. So a guy, I don't know if you know this guy. I mention him periodically on the podcast, but George Edmondson out in Tuscaloosa, he has a production company called Seed Creative.
Oh yeah, okay, I've seen his stuff.
Yeah, so he just posted the other day. He posted this thing where I think it was yesterday that he posted it. But basically he was saying, I think there's a mall out in Tuscaloosa. I don't know, maybe University Mall or I don't know, some mall that's out there. People that know Tuscaloosa better would probably, be ashamed of me. But anyway, he was saying that they need to do something to like revitalize the mall because there was another mall that ended up closing. Malls in general don't do as well as they used to. Yeah. Being children of the 80s and 90s, we remember when malls were really big.
Oh, yeah. Everything.
But anyway, he had a great idea, man. He said that they should create sort of a experience of this mall, make it all 80s themed. Like
Oh.
do the
Oh,
decorations in the 80s, the signage 80s,
I
neon
love
and just
that.
nostalgia. And he said like the stores can still be stores.
Right.
Maybe they have like 80s nights or something where everybody
Right.
does their windows like 80s themed and everybody comes in dressed in the 80s. I think it would be
That's
incredible.
kind of genius. And I mean, if you
People
think
would
about
come
it,
from
like
all over, man. They
from
really
all
would.
over, yeah, you could make it an attraction. And I mean, I'm already thinking of a lot of clothing, shoe stores that like primarily are selling, I mean, retro's in right now,
Right. Dude,
And so like,
Adidas would do so well. Reebok,
so
like get a
well.
Reebok store in there. Oh
Oh
man.
my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
just that's genius, man.
I know. I know. I hope somebody takes him up on it. He was like, "We need an investor that's going to be able to do this." Maybe George will invest it himself if he's watching this. I have him on Tuesday. I'm interviewing him next Tuesday. But if he watches this, George, you gotta do it, man. Make it
Please do it,
happen. So
George. Please do it. Whatever support you need from Birmingham, we
yeah.
will be
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
Except for money from me, George. I have no
Yeah,
money.
except financially, of course, but
Yeah, yeah. We'll come visit.
yeah, we'll share. Yeah, we'll do
That's
all sorts
funny.
of stuff.
That's funny. All right, so let's talk briefly about gear. I do want to be conscious of your time. We've already been on here
You're
for
fine. You're fine,
over
buddy.
an hour, but
You're okay.
I do want to talk gear. I'm curious right now because you did talk about renting with Next Level Productions. You worked with him and his rental house, but what I guess what kind of gear do you typically use? Are you a gearhead? And if you don't have gear that you typically like own and use, what do you typically rent and use in those cases?
So it's so funny. I'm not traditionally a gearhead,
Yeah,
but to survive in a video world, you do have to like learn your tools, and you have to understand them. And I mean, looking back, I probably wouldn't have gone the shooter route because I don't think it's just like a top skill that I naturally possess. But I didn't know that. So I was with Sony for a long time. The
yeah,
FS5s, the FS7, obviously before the new upgrades were
yeah,
made everything better, FS6. But so I was with those for a long time, and I was really just kind of with them because I had already built up Sony lenses.
yeah,
But kind of along with the West Block change and movement, there was a huge sell off of my gear, and now I'm completely Black Magic.
yeah,
I own my gear. I have a Black Magic Ursa Mini G2 that I pair with the Pocket 6K, and that's been great for me. It helps when I'm utilizing one of these cinematographers like Jay or Kyle or whoever, because that's already kind of a camera they would rent, the G2 at least. I
yeah.
mean, it's just the range; they can do anything with it. So,
I
yeah.
I was for me, I was big in autofocus.
Mm,
Like just being a one man show, run and
yeah.
gun a lot. Autofocus was really key for me. So I went Sony, but man, the Blackmagic cameras in general have always been. That's always been one of those things. Like I'm shooting with my Sony, but I'm looking over at that Blackmagic. Like I'm
Yeah.
like, man, that stuff. They put so much capabilities in their cameras. B raw, from what I hear, is incredible to edit with. I love DaVinci. I mean, I edit on DaVinci now, and the capabilities that it has is incredible. And I hear that it really is untapped, or it's like really you get to tap into its real power whenever you do shoot Blackmagic cameras. So,
Absolutely. Like
yeah, that's cool.
if I'm coloring myself, sometimes I'll just shoot ProRes because of the size. B raw is massive,
Yeah,
but if I'm sending it off to a colorist, which once again I've been trying to do more this year, and just really like this guy's specialized in color, I'm going to include him in the quote, so it's just like I already have him, and I've gotten some great colorists that have really like worked with me, kind of incorporating that in quotes. Um, but man, they would definitely prefer me to shoot in B-RAW. And like when they do get a B-RAW format, they like the skate spec. I mean, that was just like pretty much whatever I told him I wanted, he was able to create that exact color template just because he had so much range, you
Yeah.
know? Um, so at the moment, I've still kind of got a hodgepodge of lenses, which is why I was renting from Kyle a lot. I've got some Canon primes. I've got some vintage. I've got a vintage Helios. I just have like
Oh,
a
that's cool.
Frankenstein. Oh, it's so cool.
Yeah.
And then recently, and I might build this out a little bit, I got into IRIX, the IRIX.
I don't know
And
that brand.
hold on one sec. Let
Yeah,
me grab
yeah.
it. So,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
so
Okay.
IRIX, was normally known as like a super good photography company. Um, and they have recently gotten, more into video, but these cinema lenses are just like primo. They're super sharp. They, in terms of like a characteristic, they don't really go right or left, or they're kind of great mid-range characteristic. You can use them for any shoot. The throws are super smooth. Everything is great. They're heavy, they're big, they're made really well. So I kind of went down a rabbit hole and got really into IRIX and got this 45 as kind of the first collection. So I don't know. I might keep building that out, but I mean, Kyle has so much to rent from. I get to play with vintage Leicas. He's got the DZO zooms. They just recently like got some really big stuff with like anamorphic. I don't even know. I mean, it's so above my level that like, I was a Sony shooter forever, and then recently Black Magic, and still have a lot of Canon primes, but starting to play with these cinema lenses too.
Yeah, I haven't taken the plunge into the cinema lens world, but I keep seeing more and more people do it.
Yeah,
I talked with Alex Kiker not too long ago, and
yeah,
he had done he does a lot with cinema lenses, and these budget cinema lenses now that they've got are
yeah.
incredible. I mean, you
I mean,
can really,
this guy, I think is 1,500, 12 to fifteen
yeah.
hundred, but performs equally as well as some of the 5 to 10,000 ones. Yeah,
Yeah, it's crazy the I mean for a while the entry level into good cinema glass was incredible.
oh yeah,
You really couldn't afford it; you had to rent it.
had to.
But now I feel like it's a lot more consumable because again these budget companies. I think a lot of people I'm seeing are is it DZO
DZO
lenses?
is huge, and kind of the one of the better entry level ones. Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
that's the name that I see a lot.
Yeah,
But man, I'm gonna take the plunge at some point just because I love the idea of good. I love the idea of being able to first of all have the teeth on it.
yes,
You know what I mean? Like whenever you actually use like a focus wheel
yes.
or puller. The other thing is I really want to experience just forcing myself to go all manual focus at some point. I struggle because the Sony built-in screens are trash for this kind of
So
stuff.
trash,
But
terrible.
then the monitors, I just upgraded to a 7-inch monitor. I didn't go with one of the big brands.
That's okay.
I just looked a little while ago, and I was like, I think before we started, I was like, I need to look and see if this comes up. I need to look and see what my brand is. I can't remember the brand right now. So, but I
That's
did go
okay.
with I went with a 7-inch, and it's nice. It's got a few features where I can actually touch focus, so it actually works really
Oh,
well
sweet.
with
Nice.
manual focus. I can use the monitor to control my Sony and even hit record on the monitor, and it wirelessly controls it. But anyway, I'm still wrestling with that idea of like how I can't see. Is it really in focus,
Dude.
and focus peaking has never worked well for me. I'm
Yeah.
like, it either shows too much or too little, and I'm like, I can't tell if what I want in focus is actually in focus. But
You
anyway,
know, for me, I was very similar to, working with Sean Kirby changed a lot in me. He made us shoot film. And okay, he didn't make us, but he highly advised we
right,
shoot film. And I was very, very scared. And he kind of walked through it. But another thing with that was the use of cinema lenses that I really didn't understand. And he kind of explained it to me like when you go all manual, you become more invested kind of in what you're shooting. Yes, it's scary. And yes, so you don't like do an event for the first time, manual or shoot on film or anything, but like just creatively around, you start kind of playing with it. And what I have found is it makes me feel more engaged as a filmmaker. When if I feel more engaged as a filmmaker, I'm willing to take more chances creatively, and I kind of like feel more like a creative. Um, so yeah, man, I commend you. I say go for it, test it, screw up, make some blurry images.
that will definitely happen. That
Yeah,
will definitely
yeah,
happen with me.
yeah.
So, but
Yeah,
to be honest, that happens with autofocus too. Sometimes, whenever
exactly.
you just set it and you forget it and you don't even check it, and then next thing you know, it's like for some reason there was something in the background that was catching and it thinks it's an eye or something, and then
Yep.
you see it start shuttering, sort of that stutter focus thing, or I've had before where I'll do it where it's autofocus, then I'll flip it. What in the world just happened?
Speaking of auto,
Usually I just get a thumbs up that pops up in the screen. That one went crazy. Okay. All right. Well, there you go. In my last talk, I think with or the talk I had with Brian Curtin, he said, man, you just got to leave that in there. Cause I keep saying I need to turn it off, but that one was crazy. That's the first time I've
that
seen
was
that. So,
cool. Yeah.
I forgot what I was saying.
You're just talking about cinema lenses and whatnot.
Yeah. Anyway, I forget where I was going with that. That really distracted me. So, but anyway, I think I was saying that the autofocus, a lot of times I'll assume, okay, they're in focus. I'm going to flip it to manual so it doesn't shift. And then I'll find out that, well, either something got bumped or they might have moved and I forgot about it. Anyway, I think if I went all in on manual focus, you're always like double checking and it's
Right.
like, hang on, that's not quite right. And then even mid shot, a slight adjustment is going to be a lot less noticeable with manual focus than it is with autofocus. So
Totally, totally. And yeah, I mean, honestly, I think if I could do it, you definitely can do it because I was literally like, okay, yeah, and just like spinning wheels, basically. I did one of these, I used to in the past do these veteran documentaries, and I had one weekend with these veterans. Everything from interviews to B-roll, like I had to get everything in this one weekend by myself, and so it was like it made sense to go autofocus, just because I'm dealing with
right.
so many other things. But when I finally switched over, I think it was Miki,
Yeah.
Meike.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're
Yeah.
a great budget one to start off, and their lenses look phenomenal. I wish I would have never have sold them. Um,
Yeah.
and so I took on this project, and
Sorry, I got one of my kids just
oh,
popped
you're
in.
good. You're good.
I'm in the middle of recording, man. Like you're interrupting this right now. I can't answer a question. Go. It's man. We've been on here a long time. The children are
I
what's the
get it,
term?
dude.
They're
I get it.
rustling. So
I get it, brother. Yeah, but like it did that. It made me feel more part of the film. Um, it did great. It went on a festival run and won stuff. I mean, that's not because I shot manual, but it gave it a little bit more character. And that's
yeah,
what, these films are always, or these lenses are always kind of going to do. It makes it not perfect. And I think our eyes and just us as humans, like we want to see stuff we can relate to. And if it's just completely perfect and so digital, it just kind of looks like social post, and like, but with the films, with the stories, with the interviews, I really think people want to see, however you do that with lighting or lens or, the background music or whatever you use to make it more relatable, but people want that authenticity. They really do.
You've convinced me, man. I'm gonna shoot my next wedding with manual focus. No, I'm just
Yeah,
kidding. Not,
bro.
not a wedding.
Yeah.
That would be a wedding would be awful shooting manual focus. I feel like.
I mean, the
So,
wedding would go really rough, but at the end of the wedding, you would know everything you need to know about manual
oh,
focus.
that's true. One full day of wedding shooting manual focus. I would definitely learn probably
Oh,
what
dude.
not to do. I'd probably learn.
Oh,
I love
totally.
autofocus.
Totally. Absolutely, bro.
All right, let's talk about. And I think we're approaching the end. So again, I do want to be respectful of your time, but let's talk just a challenge maybe that you face. Like what's a big challenge or a lesson that you sort of learned along the way with Westblock, with Callner creates any of that kind of stuff, or just the stuff that you've done. When you freelance with people.
Man, that's a great question.
And it doesn't have to be the biggest lesson you've learned or
Yeah.
challenge you've overcome, but
I mean,
anything.
I've got some years in the game, and I have always been morphing into something new. So I think the biggest lesson is that your story doesn't have to be like someone else's story. Um, you know, I don't have to follow the path this cinematographer did, or that, or this, or whatever. And at the end of the day, the best content is that idea burning inside of you that you think no one gives a crap about. Like, that is still the best idea. And that comes from something beyond ourselves, and always when you make those projects, you get support from people you didn't expect it. It does really good at the festival. Like, it was in you to be released, and you need to release it. And you may not know how that all shapes out, where the budget comes from, where the John champions come from with the lights or this or that. But you don't need to. You just need to go ask someone. You need to make the first step. So many ideas have died on my computer. So many scripts have died. So many videos have been started and not finished because I got in my head of what others would think. I really did. Or I just wanted to make it perfect.
Yeah.
And that's not how this works. That's not how this works. Just like you starting this podcast, like, you don't know the outcome. It could totally fail, but you still need to walk through it, and you're still going to learn something in the walk. But 9 times out of 10, if you keep walking, you're going to find what you need on the way.
Yeah.
I mean, I wish I could tell young Drew that a million times,
I think the perfection is the enemy of completion. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Like it's perfection is never attainable. And
Never.
and sometimes we just got to put things out there and really even the journey towards not necessarily perfection but moving just improvement comes through completing challenges, just like
Yes.
finish the thing. I used to do just when I first started doing YouTube, I did YouTube content. I mean, it's still on my page. Some of it is, I've hidden a lot of it. But like a lot of my YouTube content was me trying to be like other people, like all the YouTubers that I used to watch. I'd review this new mic, or I would review, my A7 IV that I got, or I would talk about my setup or something. And so much of that just felt just not me, like I was trying to be somebody else. I was trying to imitate these other people. And to be honest, this podcast is the one thing that I've made that I'm like, all right, that's me. Like
Yeah.
you and I would have this same conversation
Totally.
if we met up at a coffee shop somewhere.
Totally.
I'm a little bit more direct and intentional with some of my questions with the slides and stuff. I wouldn't be pulling up slides at a coffee shop, but other than that, I mean, it really is just me and my natural curiosity, and it feels good. So that's what I've found is a lot of times you need to quit imitating other people, and you got to find like, who are you in this creative space, you know? And
Absolutely.
at least for
Because
me, Creating Creators podcast has become that. So
man, if you had not have followed that, like all these people wouldn't have been on your show. People wouldn't have listened, and it wouldn't have built that momentum. And like, man, like even just hearing that motivates me to, do something. I mean, it's crazy. Every time you kind of follow that, I think there's a lot of creatives in the shadows, like even if they don't say it, like, go, man, because we've all done it at some point and we all respect it, and it inspires others to do it too.
that's a big thing. I think in the creative space, I mean, talking with people like Brian Curtin, talking with people, I'll use like trying to think of even Harrison Tarabella, like
Yeah.
talking with those people, they're at all various levels, right? I mean, some people have been in it, a lot longer. I think Brian's first video that we talked about was like 17 years ago,
Whoa.
and Harrison, obviously 17 years ago, I think was probably in middle school or something, so it was
Yeah.
maybe more, maybe even younger than that, maybe elementary school. But anyway, I think there's so much mutual respect for creatives because, Brian Curtin was at some point like fresh out of college, starting his career, and he respects the people that are at that level moving up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's what's been really neat is people that shouldn't be talking to me in my mind are talking to me, I think, and talking like to an audience that they know aren't where they are right now,
Yeah.
but like it's that mutual respect for the journey and the process and the learning. Not to mention nowadays, you even talked about it earlier, like the young guys, man, the talent that we see in some of these guys.
Crazy.
Alex Kiker, man, he's so talented. Harrison Tarabella is so talented. I mean, and I'm leaving out plenty that are still amazingly talented younger guys, but anyway, so I think there's just a bunch of mutual respect, and thankfully I get to be part of some pretty cool conversations that really highlight that. So
Yeah, man.
it's
So
been
cool.
good. All right, so I'm going to hit these pretty quick. So I want to know what's next, but then I also want to know like who inspires you. So we'll sort of glump these together, at least in my questioning. So go ahead and tell me like what's next for West Block, what's next for Drew Callner. I mean, I know now you got this full-time job, you got this son. Congratulations on that again.
Thank you.
On both things, the son and the job. I was originally talking about the son, but also the job. So,
Thank you.
but tell me what's next for you, man.
So what's next for me is me just kind of figuring out a little bit more of how to operate West Block with a little bit more hands off, and transitioning into more of like an EP executive producer role, which is a huge shift for me. I very much, I mean, I still want to do PA stuff, like I, but life has taken me in a different direction. And so it's kind of producing from afar and pulling together the team. That's a huge shift for me. And so y'all are kind of seeing it like as it happens right now. So my goal is to just kind of keep on that, keep eating kind of the humble pie, and keep creating stories that I want to tell, not because of a price tag, not because of anything, but just because it inspires me or I can get deep with someone. That's my main goal. Is I want to hear people's vulnerabilities. I want to share mine. And that's all done through deeper kind of content.
Yeah.
So
What about with Amfirst? Is there like some big aspirations there? Big
Yeah,
projects you got coming up?
absolutely. So Daniel, there was only one other videographer before me,
Right.
and it was very much like a videographer role, a corporate videographer. You shoot events, maybe every once in a while interview the CEO. Well, Daniel, when he hired me, he really wanted somebody kind of with my background that had done television, online content and film, because he wanted to go a little deeper with some of these campaigns. So yeah, absolutely. We've got a lot of stuff in the works where storytelling can be more of a part of the content we put out, rather than just these kind of quick, hey, look at this service or this product, or, like a traditional financial institution. We are pulling references from, some awesome content teams that work for some other credit unions that, it looks like a Nike commercial.
Yeah.
At the end of it, or a Publix commercial, at the end of it, you're almost crying, and you're like, what was this for again? Oh, a credit union? So yeah, we're trying to go to that level. And he's kind of letting me incorporate a little bit of that this year.
One of my favorite videos, and I don't think I'm not gonna try and pull it up right now, man, but it really is. It was one that I used to use with my students whenever I taught marketing, and I taught them, like, we were sort of looking at I guess storytelling in ads. Yeah. And dude, it was this incredible video. This guy that got up every morning and went through this routine. It looks like it's in Korea or some Asian like urban city, and so he's getting up every morning, going through his routine, and along the way he helps people. Like, there's this little lady with a cart. He always helps the lady with the cart. Later on, it's like a dog. He always gives the dog like a little bit of his food. There's this mom and daughter that are like, panhandling on the street, and he always gives them a little bit of money, puts some money in there. And it's this guy that's like, he's nobody. Really, right. He's just a normal average Joe. And little by little, he keeps going through that. Well, then it starts showing, like, this lady with the cart, she's like waiting on him one day, and she's like, oh, what took, but they're like, it's like this neat, sweet kind of friendship they've built, helps with that. The dog ends up becoming his dog, like follows him home. And then one day, finally, it's like the emotional part of the video. He goes, and the mom's there, but the daughter's gone. And the music sort of gets really sort of solemn. And then suddenly you hear this girl holler, "Mom." And then the camera turns and looks. The girl's dressed in school clothes. Like, she got it. She's in school. And dude, it is seriously one of the most emotional. So I know, dude, just me telling it makes me tear up. But yeah. It is one of the most emotional commercials I've ever seen. And it's for an insurance company. the whole thing is, I know. I'm buying it. I'm coming to some Asian urban country somewhere, and I'm gonna buy that insurance. But yeah, I think no matter what you're selling, or no matter what, and I say selling, like, sometimes it may just be like building morale, if it's internal communications. But no matter what you're promoting, dude, story matters so much, and the emotion behind it matters so much. So that's cool that I think this new journey for you could be really creative opportunities for you, and also, like you said, it frees up that other stuff you're doing with West Block to be like, hey, I don't have to rely on this. Now I get to have fun with this. So
yeah. Thank you, man. I really hope so. It's been great so far. It was such a scary jump. I was basically this untamed Mustang out in the prairie, rolling around. I got, captured corporate world, and now I'm but that's what was in my head. Like, taming the beast a little, the creative, but that's not what happened at all. If anything, I'm more creative now, because a lot of that, like, kind of rock star filmmaker, business owner, like, it's actually just, it's very scary and sad. A lot of it, you're chasing down money, you're chasing down clients, you don't know where the next job's coming from. It's very stressful. And so unless you're doing, like, really well and have, like, tons of retainer clients or something, or in a market like Atlanta or LA, like, it's very scary. So opening up, getting a full-time job that kind of takes care of some credentials, like, man, it has opened up a lot for me.
That's really neat, man. I always enjoy seeing sort of like what's the difference with this conversation, and obviously everybody's got their own unique story, but man, to be honest, that part of what you just said might be one of my biggest takeaways because I mean I'm on the other side of what you're doing. Like I work full-time job and then I do some freelance on the side. And I've always wrestled with the idea of stepping out and doing that full time. And I mean I'm not saying that like obviously we don't, just like we were saying earlier, quit imitating others and
Right.
find your space. And so obviously I'm not saying that now I'm going to imitate you and stay where I'm at, but at the same time I like it gives me a good perspective, like hearing from somebody that's going the opposite direction as to what I feel like I'm being pulled to some degree. I think it's refreshing and really sort of just gives me a different perspective because a lot of the people that I've talked with, I mean, obviously I've talked with people that their businesses are sustaining them and they're not looking to go into a company.
Right.
And I've talked with some people that have gone the other way. I mean, I think of Harrison Tarabella. He left a company, a full-time job to start his, along with I think some other ones. But anyway, that's cool. I think that it's a unique perspective, and I think it's a valuable perspective that a lot of people need to hear because people like me that are looking to go the other way, sometimes we might need to hold up and be like, wait. How good do we really have it
Well,
right now?
just hearing you say that, like you could still take some risks creatively that I think would be equally as invigorating and kind of scary.
Oh yeah,
You could, you've done kind of, and I don't know, I haven't done enough research or seen enough of your stuff, but just like it sounds like you've done content in this area and you could try, maybe there was an idea for like a short film or a
right,
music video or something that now you have the freedom to kind of do it on your own dime, take as long as you need, hire who you want, don't hire who you want, use the locations you want, and that could be equally as invigorating. Because if you just say, I'm going to go full board, and kind of go with the Tony Robbins, like, don't quit, get up every day, blah, 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 you're going to make it. Like,
right.
that was me. And that the Marine mentality was screaming in my head. But, and there's successes in that. But I don't know. I kind of came to the realization I would probably have to move to Atlanta to really, really make this pop, because I kind of got to a point where I'm going up against agencies that have like 30 people.
Right.
In Birmingham, there's like a level, and then the next level is like Big and Cayenne and
Right.
these, like really big companies that, have brick and mortar offices and all this. And so, yeah, it's tough, man. It's tough.
Well, and I think like we were saying earlier, you don't have to imitate other people and to get that creative itch or you scratch that itch. You have a lot of freedom when it's not determining your lifestyle, so to speak. And I've heard quite a few people more recently, I think over the last few years, Gary V, we all recognize that name and think probably have followed him on social media, especially if you've ever considered being like a business owner.
Yeah.
The hustle mentality is really great, but at the same time, man, that can really destroy some people and some families. And I don't know about you, but I'm sure just based on our conversation, it seems like you'd probably relate with me on this. But man, my wife and my kids are utmost important to me. You know what I mean? Like that's
100%.
what, like I do the stuff I do for my job, not so that I can hold up my job and say, look at me. I do that stuff so that I can come back to my family and that my family and I have shared experiences. That's what it's all about for me.
Absolutely. It's such a deeper level. And it's one of those things. I mean, I'm a new dad, so I still know my thoughts about being a parent. Like they're not too far gone. And you just don't know until you know. But it's such a deeper level of life experience with a family and being a father and just, I mean, yeah, that's a whole nother podcast. Like I could go off on that, but
Well, obviously a
yeah.
podcast that you had going for a while, right?
You know why I really stopped it? Well, I was so embarrassed. I did like 4 episodes. It was called The Dad Effect, and I would have dads on who, were not only cool dads, but like I could talk to them about their career and stuff too. And when I finally had my kid, it was like the next week I had, I'm going to go in the podcast. Everything's going to be very fresh. I'll talk about the birth. And all I could think is I was such an idiot. I didn't know anything. Here I am like talking to dads and telling them how I'm going to act. I mean, literally, it was like a whole different world. Yeah. So maybe in the future I could like come back and like, now I totally get it. I get everything.
Well, I'll say this: you never. How would I say this? Well, first of all, no one knows what they're doing. I've heard Brian Curtin even said that in regards to like what he does in his job. Yeah. Like, but I guarantee he'd probably echo the same thing as a father. But like, none of us know what we're doing. We're all trying to figure it out. You know what I mean? Like, totally. And I try to tell my kids that. And then they want to act like they know what they're doing. You know what I mean? Like, and they know what I should do. Right. But it's I think it's really freeing when you can just sort of admit you don't know everything. Yes. And yes. For me, trust me, we've all been there. We've all done the whole like looking at other parents and being like, oh, there's no way in hell I would ever have my kid doing that. Yeah. But. Yeah. But at the same time, later on, we end up eating those words, because it's like, well, there goes my kid. So
totally, dude.
Yeah,
totally.
Yeah. But parenting has been literally the hardest thing that I've ever done. And I'll say this, and then we'll end with this last one. But dude, whenever you start that podcast back, I'm game, man. You holler at me. I'm on there, man. I would love to. Surely a dad of 4 kids has something to share, probably a lot of mistakes. Qualify. I've got tons of mistakes that I can share with you. So,
yes, absolutely.
I'm probably about to make one in just a few minutes.
Me too.
So, all right. So last question, who inspires you, man? Like who's somebody that you work with now that you think, man, I'm like, this person sharpens me. And usually I use this as a launching point for a potential future conversation. So I like to try to reach out to these people and maybe have them on. So who's somebody you work with? Who's somebody that you surround yourself with that you're like, this person inspires me to be better?
I would absolutely say Kyle Roberts for this. I thought I had reached different pinnacles of kind of my career growth, or as a director, producer, editor. And when I started working with Kyle, I realized that there's a lot more levels I can go to. And really having somebody like this on my team, even if he's just subcontracted, is like a diamond in a rough. He's someone that like truly, truly, truly looks at each project and goes 1,000%. I mean, obviously everyone's got to talk quotes and, what gear are we going to use? Is that rental? Is there money for this? All that stuff. But like, he's someone that has such a pure, like creative, I just want to create. I want to do something fun. And you can see him, he gets all giddy when he starts talking about a project, and you're like, man, like, I thought my project was going to be too amateur for you. And here you are all pumped up, and, he'll leave the conversation and he'll start texting you ideas. And he's a dad, and, he's busy on this shoot or that shoot. And he's just like, the obsession starts. He's someone that really has it, and he sharpens me. I mean, he gaffed for, I don't know how many years. He's one of those DPs that comes from like a really heavy lighting background. So I'm learning stuff from him every single shoot, every single time I rent from him, his lens knowledge. He's really upped my game as a creative myself.
Oh, and I think that podcast that I watched him on, if I remember correctly, he's sort of gritty kind of like that's his preference. Now,
Yeah.
not
Oh,
always what he
yeah.
has to deliver, but
Right.
he's a pretty gritty kind of style guy.
Yeah. And
And
what's interesting about him is so he's a lot of people's DP that kind of don't always give him the credit. So he's a lot of people's one of their go-to phone calls for like a high level, let's say Alabama Power commercial
right,
or Spectrum commercial. They're calling like 3 or 4 people in Birmingham, and Kyle's one of those people. Now those people don't always get the glory, because the director will or whatever, or really Spectrum does, because
right,
Spectrum doesn't tell who
right.
they hired. But so he's so versatile. He has shot real estate stuff for me. He shot the skate spec. Definitely the gritty stuff. He can go really that's what he gets really passionate about. But he is so versatile as
Yeah.
a DP.
Well, and it'd be cool to talk with him just as a gearhead, man. Just
Oh,
because
he's
I
hardcore
yeah,
gearhead, dude.
he's probably over my head gearhead because he does work in the cinema world
That's
a lot
okay,
more than
dude. I
what I
mean, if
do. So
he's talking to me and if he's making sense to me, then I'm guessing you're more gearhead than I am. Like, dude, he's great. He can really simplify it for you.
well, that's awesome. Well, I will definitely reach out to him
Yeah.
and hopefully have him on a future podcast. Well, that's it for this for what I had prepared, man. You've been really a pleasure to have on, man. I
Thank
really
you, dude.
appreciate. Like I said, your encouragement early on was really just perfect timing. So thank you again for reaching out and telling me that. And I told Cole, my coworker, I was like, dude, I've got to reach out to this guy and get him on just because I so respect and appreciate that comment that you made, the DM you sent.
Yeah.
So again, thank you so much for that. Seriously.
You're welcome, man. I mean, just personally, like I feel sometimes like I'm this beat up dad and who's going to want to talk to me. And I mean, so like on my story, like Recovering Hope, this film, it did so well. And, I was on magazines and newspaper and news, and it really felt like I'm going to be this awesome director for the rest of my life. And the next couple things I did just completely flopped. And so like, I still kind of have that in my head. Like, basically I was shit hot, back in the day. And now I'm just kind of like this washed up, whatever. And so like, it means a lot that you would want to talk to me. Like, it's like we all kind of post this stuff to make us look amazing and, look at our company and yada, yada. But at the same time, like we all suffer from this mental stuff, and I really don't know any creative that doesn't. And I think one that would say they don't is completely lying, because there's a huge, like, just vulnerable part of it, and like we're all trapped in our own heads thinking we're not good enough a little bit. So, man, I'm so glad I kind of followed my heart and just sent you something. I've really been trying to do that lately. I'm so glad you wanted to chat.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's been a great conversation. I think it's been a little bit different than some of the others just because we talked so long initially just about so many different things. So
Yeah.
I
Well,
appreciate you
chop
putting
up
up.
whatever you want, man.
No, 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 no. I don't think I'm going to cut anything out. Even Lincoln, my son, popping in. I'm probably going to leave that in and just say, it's real life here. But I do apologize for going 2 hours on this because I usually
Okay.
try to keep it to an hour and a half at the most. I think you and Alex Kiker, I think, are the longest ones so far because I think he went about 2 hours too. But both of those, man, I mean, just the conversation's just fun to have. So we definitely need to grab some coffee sometime
Yeah.
and
Anytime,
just
man.
meet in person. So would love to do that. But thank you again so much for this. And one last thing, you said your podcast or not podcast. I'm sorry, your documentary can be found.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to pull this up real quick, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm,
so go ahead.
I
What were you
was going to say,
saying?
I can send you the link on this chat too.
Well, and I've got
Oh,
the
you got it.
YouTube channel. Yeah, I've got the YouTube channel pulled up, and I see
Okay.
the the trailer here, the Recovering Hope documentary trailer number 2, is it actually on this channel? Oh, here it is. Recovering Hope full-length heroin documentary.
That's
Yes.
it.
So it
That's
is
it.
on your channel on YouTube for those the people that maybe want to go watch
That's
it.
it. That is it.
Yeah. Well,
I
that's
mean,
cool. Go ahead.
it's
You were
crazy.
saying?
I mean, I didn't know what I was doing. It was a long time ago, but this is proof that story trumps everything. Because all the equipment wasn't there. I didn't even know how to use a gimbal back then or a drone or anything. But the story is still cut and put together really well, and it's story still trumps stuff, you
Well,
know?
I'm definitely gonna watch it, man. I didn't know about this. I mean, I went deep into some of your stuff, but I didn't hit this, and I should have. So I
Well,
apologize on the front end and
no
not
worries.
watching that. But
Well, that it was kind of tactically pushed down a little bit, and a lot of that was because I made this. It got a lot of success locally, did great in the film festivals, but since I had my story, it was a little bit more personal than, I don't know. I just had some feelings afterwards. Like, I want to be known as a filmmaker and not as like a recovery filmmaker. So I started getting all these like opportunities to basically make number 2 or to come to this community and film this and that. And since it was a little bit too close to home, like, I don't know, I just didn't want to typecast myself. And so I made a very strong shift to like music videos and sports stuff and, that sort of stuff. But if you do go through my stuff, you'll kind of see there. I do a lot of stuff with Addiction Prevention Coalition. I do, just other, Not One More in Huntsville. And so there is still like a vein of that, but man, this was so emotionally draining to edit. It was 4 terabytes of
oh
footage.
goodness! And
We
this was how
got
many years
way
ago?
too,
You said.
this 2017.
Let me see. It says on here. Yeah, so 4 years ago. I
Yeah,
mean,
that's just when I posted it,
oh
because
yeah, yeah.
for a long
Well,
time we were trying to get it into Netflix, and um, it it didn't get it. But
well, even so, you said 2017. Like, t- two. How many terabytes did you say? Four, two,
4.
4 terabytes. Like 4 terabytes. Like we didn't have all the SSDs. Like now, 4 terabyte SSD doesn't cost that much. But back then, man, the storage alone was a lot. I mean, I'm assuming you were working possibly with proxies, depending on what kind of computer you had back then.
It
You might
was
not have
so
known how
crazy.
to do proxies back
I
then.
literally didn't.
Yeah,
That second logo that pops up is the editor that I eventually hired, but I
yeah,
tried editing it myself for a long time, and I got completely spun out. One, I'm just too attached to the content. I mean, I'm in it, my mom's in it. But then number 2, that's just, you should have never do that as a director of something this big. It was way easier for them to do a first and second pass and me to come in and say, okay, let's change this. I mean, I was just spending hours on hours trying to edit. And man, there was one point someone told me if I transcribe the interviews that it's easier to edit. So
yeah.
I literally started paying people to transcribe these 2-hour interviews. And then I'd just have all this paper. And I'm like, okay, what am I? No, I'm a visual person, So I stopped doing that. It was just, once again, all these like roadblocks that I just had to that were confusing. You just have to keep kind of going forward.
Well, I'm definitely gonna check that out, man. I appreciate you sharing that, and
Yeah.
I definitely respect sort of the vulnerability that it took for you to put yourself and your story along with all these others and your mom's. Like, that's that's tough. I can
Thank
only
you.
imagine, but I totally respect it, and I look forward to watching this. And I'll let you know after I watch it, man.
Yeah, please do, man.
I'll message you back. So
Okay.
that's cool. Well, and I appreciate again you sharing today. I think this is, for me, this has been a beneficial conversation. So I hope also for those that watch, I know it will be. So
Yeah, man. Let's
so I
definitely
appreciate
get
it.
good coffee, dude, for sure. I would, and anything I can do to help you or help this podcast or whatever, you let me know, man. I mean, seriously.
All right. Well, hey, we will be. My goal is I'm in the works with doing a meetup.
Oh,
So
yeah.
yeah, and it hopefully it's going to be really good. I'm working with Air Seven Media.
Yeah.
They're gonna do like
I've
they're gonna
never
have their
met him, but I
car.
really, I really want to meet him. Yeah.
Yeah, Aaron's a great guy. He really is, and his car, man, with the moto crane on it is so cool. So he's gonna bring that. He's gonna have that. I think we're gonna have it at a local brewery in Hoover. Is our
Cool.
plans right now, and hopefully it's gonna be July 18th. So if you don't have
Okay.
anything, keep clear that day,
Yeah,
man.
I'll
That
put it
evening,
down.
it's gonna be like 6 to 9 probably. It's gonna be in the
Okay.
evening. But I'm that's our plans as of right now. And Aaron's going to bring his car. I'm working with a couple of people I'm talking with right now about sponsoring the event. So because Pope Films and Creating Creators podcast uh, cost me more than it makes me right now
Oh,
at
yeah,
times. But
dude. I
uh,
feel you there.
but yeah, I think it's a really great concept. George Edmondson, I mentioned him earlier with Seed Creative. He's the one that sort of told me, dude, you need to do a meetup with some of these people. And so I was like, that's a great idea. I think it'll be neat for me. I think it could be beneficial for everybody that comes
Yeah.
just to hang out. Plus, we could have like a central focus for each meetup. And so in this case, it's going to be the car. In future times, we might meet up at a studio somewhere, and that studio space could be sort of the feature.
I
But
know a really good studio when you do the studio one. It's Kyle and his partner studio. It's right behind the Pizzits.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
it's just got everything, dude. I mean, they've got, digital backboards that you can change. I mean, they've shot whole films in there. It's one of these big old, Birmingham buildings that got turned into a complete studio. It's beautiful.
Well, that's the kind of stuff I'm hoping that down the road. I mean, assuming depending on how well this one goes down the road, I would love to do that. I've got a
Yeah.
couple of. I know I talked with Jannard Archibald.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
His actually comes out tomorrow. Tomorrow or Monday, one or the other. And he's got what is it? Supernaut. Have you heard of this
Yep.
yet?
Yep. He just
So
started that too, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think a lady started it that's sort of like the head of it. And then she's brought him and a couple of other people in on it. And, they've got a studio space. I think they're doing like a opening, I think at the end of this month, they're doing one. And they're trying to do a meetup there. So I'm hoping to maybe partner with them a little bit on that. So we might have a meetup before the July meetup as well. So,
Dude,
but anyway,
this
I'm
is so
excited,
cool.
man. Yeah, I think it's going in a good direction. The people I'm meeting, again, it's for me, it's very selfish why I'm doing this. I want to meet people, and I want
It
to meet
feeds
people that
you.
are in the creative space.
Yeah, it feeds you. That's great, dude. And don't. I mean, it's easy to say, don't stop. I mean, I'm not the one doing it, but you know what I'm saying. If you ever need any encouragement, let's go to coffee, and I will tell you to stay steadfast because it really is. It was fun for me to be on. It inspires me. I'm sure it did the same for Sean Kirby and John Champion, or else they wouldn't have gone on.
Yeah,
Like they get something out of it too. And once again, the meetup just connects us even more.
yeah,
And just kind
yeah.
of strengthens what you're doing.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm hoping it's going to be. So, all right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. Thank you again, Drew,
Thank
for
you.
being on this, man. You've been an awesome guest, and again, thank you for the encouragement.
Absolutely, Brian. Thanks for having me.